Hi, my name is Michał Rokosz. I'm a partner at Innovo. We are a first choice fund for most ambitious founders from Poland and Eastern Europe. Today, I'm happy to talk with Stas Matwijenko. Stas founded Allset. He's currently a CEO of the company. The interesting thing is he started the company already in the States. He moved from Ukraine. He got his first funding there and is still managing the company from California. Stas will share with us the story about getting first funding in the States, launching the company over there, how to convince Andreessen Horowitz, as well as basically some interesting facts about the company and how he's managing the business. I hope you will enjoy the episode. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Enjoy! Hi Stas, great to see you on the video conference. First of all, let's maybe start with you telling a little bit about yourself. Who are you, what are you doing, and what brought you to becoming an entrepreneur?
Hi, Michal. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited for being on that podcast. About me, I'm just a regular, not best student from regular university in Ukraine that decided to just do something that is more interesting than listening to some old guys in Ukraine. For me, the most important was just start doing something. Just start. This is how I got my first failed startup. After I kind of got into that space, I figured out, okay, so we have mobile phones now, like smartphones that can help us on doing some things for us. And thanks to that, I came with the idea to create a company, a mobile loyalty program for restaurants. That one was cool in Ukraine. And then we expanded to Europe countries as well. After that, we played with other technologies in the restaurant space. And restaurant space is actually the space that I've been always looking at as an opportunity. Restaurant space was, and still, is kind of the greenfield in terms of technology wise. You can see that there's still a lot of things to discover, conquer, and still the whole market is still, especially before COVID, it was mostly offline. And thanks God, right now, thanks to COVID, the market actually got digitized really quickly within 1 month. Actually, right now we are in future. Before, people been forecasting that restaurants will sell online around 80 to 90% of their sales in 2025. But right now, here we are, 2021, and 80 up to 90% of sales on average per restaurant is done online. Most of those sales actually are not delivery. Yeah, delivery is a big part of the restaurant online sales, but another big part, especially right now, are contactless payments. Simply before you were going to a restaurant as previously, and you were just telling, "Hey, I want this," and they were like, "Okay, here's the terminal, pay with that." But now, when you go into a restaurant and you say, "I want to order," they tell you, "Hey, you can whether pre-order with any of these apps that we're working with, or here's the QR code that you can scan and order there," because we don't take in-person orders right now. This is how to make it more safer. So that's why kind of a big portion of sales right now are online, even though it's kind of partially offline, but it's the transaction itself is done online in the cloud. And this opened up a huge new market that I call contactless ordering. And this is why with Allset, we're focusing around that at the moment. And we are the best positioned to pioneer and get leading share of that market.
Yeah, I think you actually had an amazing pivot last year, and it was a crazy ride for sure. We're in the future right now, but let's go back to the past. Around 5 years ago, you mentioned you started your first business that failed. You started it in the Eastern European markets, focused on the restaurants. And then with your second business, you moved to the States. What was the reason for failing the first business and then having a successful launch of the second one?
So actually, it wasn't kind of a big fail in terms of, I think we got the revolution start in Ukraine, and that was really hard to operate in Ukraine because of that. So we decided to move on to a new market where we don't have Revolution and all the restaurants are on fire. But if you want to move to US, then mobile loyalty program that we had in Europe were not new in US, and they already had players that already got the market. We connected with our investors and we said that this is more obvious thing to do is to make just not just a pivot, but actually figure out what we can do for the US market to get it. And we actually decreased the price of the company as well. And we raised another seed round with the new presentation for the new product for the US expansion. And that's how we get it done. So basically, the first one were more like an experience for us on how to launch and operate business in Ukraine from Ukraine. But the second one was, okay, how we can keep the R&D team in Ukraine to save money and get the US market while we're not spending as much as other companies there.
I would like to deep dive on that part. So you were like 25 back then, moving to US, and you managed to raise a seed round from tier one investors. Like how do you do that?
Yeah, so first, before those tier one investors, we had investors from Ukraine that I had to pitch as well. And I pitched a lot of investors in Ukraine and Russia. And I think I got some skills. And even before that, to my first business, I actually raised 300K on the presentation. I just had presentation. And I was 22, 23 years old. And startups were like something new back then. And if you're already doing startup in not just Ukraine or Russia, but for Europe, that was already big for investors. They didn't have much experience there. So that was easy for me. And kind of, I got some confidence on, okay, so now I know how to raise. I was learning a lot, not just from books and experience from US. I was actually pitching a lot, and I was getting a lot of questions that investors got. So I kind of quickly were able to automatically respond to some questions quickly and understand what investors are looking for. And then when I moved to US, I was like, okay, who's number one here? and I just started cold emailing everybody, actually. And this is the number one thing that you don't need to do. Don't cold email to investors. So after that, I actually read a lot on that topic, and I investigated positive responses from whom they were. You need to figure out who is looking for you, who is already looking for startups like yours. And then I went to Crunchbase. I started looking, okay, who invested in similar companies in the similar space, who already exited from similar space. And then I was filtering those funds. And then you can't email just to somebody from that fund. You need to figure out who exactly was working on that deal. This is his job, and he is covering that space. He already know everybody, and if there is a new player, they definitely want to hear about you. I don't reach out saying, hey, this is what I do. I actually reaching out saying, congrats on your article, or congrats on the company you invested in. And basically that's it. And then at the end, I just put my name and the website. And then whoever is interested, they get it back to me. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, I've got interest in your company. What do you do? And then when you have interest from them, then you start.
So you still did the cold mail,
Yep.
but you were not pitching. You were trying to build a relationship, yeah?
Yeah, I was asking recommendations from guys who already experienced in that space. So there's a good advice. Don't ask for money, ask for advice when you're looking for money. Yeah, this is how I reached out to Jeff Jordan, but I was simply looking for his thoughts on our company because we were doing pre-orders for dining, and he used to be CEO at OpenTable, the leading booking platform for restaurants. And of course, he got interested because this is what he'd been doing. And perhaps he and his team had ideas on how to merge table reservations and orders. And this is what we've done. We got a few calls with him. And then he just said, hey, come by to my office. And when I came, there were like 8 partners staring at me and waiting for a presentation. Like, okay, hi guys, here's what I do, and here's where we're going with that. And yeah, they tried our service right away nearby their office.
In the past, it was worth to have a few clients around Sand Hill Road, I assume.
We actually went to Palo Alto and other kind of suburban hubs where we have high density of restaurants in Bay Area nearby Sand Hill Road, and we got those restaurants, and we got a few popular ones that I know personally a lot of guys going to. And I was going there every day because even though we didn't have users there, I was going there at least once a week to make sure that they serve it nicely and they don't forget how it works. So then, when I have partners in PCs that want to check it out, they will order that restaurant, and that restaurant will serve them nicely. Even support team had, even though like Bay Area was not big market for us, so support team had a high priority for orders in that area. Make sure that everything's gonna be right.
That's actually interesting. I have a similar case from Booksy when one of our co-investors, he was hesitating whether to invest or not, and suddenly he became much more excited. And after the round, it turned out in the process he was cutting his hair, and he saw his barber started
Mm.
using Booksy, so he asked him, and he was like bragging about the product. So it's good to
Mm.
if you have a consumer product, you can really make a additional impression just by this kind of service. But if you could elaborate a little bit, so when did you move to the States, and what was the state of your business when you actually closed your US seed round?
We had a launched pilot, and in with 12 restaurants in San Francisco when we were raising seed. When we closed seed, we were live fully in San Francisco and Bay Area. And the state of business were like non-profitable, not many orders.
Mm-hmm.
We got seed round to see how marketplace is gonna work when you add more users and more restaurants, because you can't verify how marketplace is gonna work, not at the scale. So at least we were pitching that we're gonna take over one district in San Francisco, and we already had 12 restaurants, which I were still thinking it's not enough. And the problem was that we had more expensive restaurants because we wanted to busy people to enjoy quick meal at not quick serve restaurants at a table. But it was hard to get those customers using us, and then we pivoted more to casual part. But the state was again early stage, like very early stage, just a few months I think since we launched in San Francisco.
Like, I think a lot of founders hesitate to move to the States permanently. They fly in and out, or they like always decide to do it later. But do you think you can effectively raise and manage the company that is targeting US market without moving permanently to the US?
No, kind of you don't need to move to US, but you need to be there for some time, or you need to have somebody on your team, at least leading product manager, better co-founder that lived or living in US. Because if you want to get US customers and US users, you need to understand what they're looking for. If you do business from Ukraine, then you create product in US for Ukrainian people. They're like, why do I need that? US people may not have that problem that you're trying to fix in Ukraine and sell that in US. So this is most important.
How about the formal side, like visas, accommodation, etc.? Was it a big challenge to organize that?
So if you have leading investors, or at least any investor from US that already backed you, at least you have term sheet. You will not have any problems getting working visa there, like for your team. Like no problem. That shouldn't be a problem because that's what they have to do because already they invested in you. But first, you need to get B visa, like tourist visa. I'm pretty sure it's not hard. Of course, you can get a lot of no's, but who tries, then you get. The more you try, the more chance you will get. But definitely, you will get it. And then just start your relationships with investors and start building a product there. B visa is enough for you to, at least for I think 6 months is enough for you to polish your product for U.S. market and find first initial investments, and then after that, with U.S. investors, you can easily get working visa for your company because you already have U.S. money.
Mhm.
And e-visa is the one that you need to get. No, yeah, e-visa, or you can go for O visa with special abilities connected to your company. And this can be a good case because you can say, hey, they invested in us because we have that special ability that nobody else has in US.
Okay, so you went on a regular B1, like this business slash tourist visa, and once you got the investment, you organized your permanent option to stay.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you run the company now? Like, how big part of the team is based in the States versus in Ukraine?
Before COVID, we had more people in US. Right now, less because we were impacted heavily. So most of the team right now, up to 80% in Ukraine, around 20% or less in US. But I wish we can hire more in US. And right now, we working on the round to make that happen because we didn't fire anybody. We just used to have a lot of independent contractors in US, mostly sales. And my thoughts here, you need to hire best people in the country where they're cheaper, but in US you also need to target for the best people. It's better to have best person in Ukraine for me than average person in US, honestly, because that were a waste of money there. But of course, it's better to have leading person in US in your space because in Ukraine you don't even have that people. But you need to have budget for those, and yeah, this is really important. So until you have money for best guys in US, don't hire people there. Or if you need somebody just for basic job, okay, that's fine. But don't expect from them something big.
You and one of your co-founders are based in US in Los Angeles, as far as I remember. It's a crazy time zone difference. How do you manage the company? Like 90% of your team is asleep when you're awake, and the other way around.
Remember, best people. We can't afford to have best people in US, but we can afford to have best people in Ukraine and other countries. The way we build our operations are similar to OKRs. This is where we're going right now. We divided company by departments that have their own specific goals and plans and KPIs based on what company needs. So first of all, we set up the kind of the biggest targets, goals for the company for this year. One general metric, like for us, it's revenue. Then second one is how we're gonna achieve that, like what strategy we're gonna use. Then you build a strategy, and you know which metrics are important to implement that strategy. And then you, after you have that important metrics, for example, for us, areas where we offering the largest selection of restaurants, number of zip codes, and where we kind of have the network effect launched. So it's a minimum amount of restaurants and minimum amount of orders per zip code. This shows us how we executing our strategy, because the more zip codes we have, the bigger we are, the more areas we have where we're leading positions vs our competitors. So we're beating everybody there. And then you go to each department and you make sure that you have a proper team lead there in that department that has up to 3 metrics assigned to him that are most really important in order to execute that strategy. And then it's their job to pitch you on their plans, on the execution, and how they're going to bring that metrics with their team to life for this year. And then you do it for each department. And then that's it. They're all on their own. They have their plans that they came and said, okay, this is our challenging and ambitious plans for us. This is what I and my team wants to achieve. And that's it. They don't need me for that. They need me only when we do monthly check-in and they say how they're going with their plans, how they're executing, if they need any help from other departments. But they can do it on their own. They go to other departments on their own. Yeah, mostly my job here is to make sure that we have correct strategy and that in a year we will be in correct place, just thinking on what we should do in a year to be more successful in 2 years. So this is what I'm mostly thinking about right now.
Okay, so it's basically about having an independent, strong senior team that kind of
Yeah.
doesn't require management day to day or week to week. So
Yeah.
you focus on what are the product needs, what are the customer needs, and on the strategic decisions.
Yeah, so you need to remove micromanagement and bring in more trust to people that you hire. So make sure you hire the right people whom you trust, and then if they trust you, and then if you have mutual trust and you agree both on targets, then let them work. Don't bother. This is what I do.
There is this famous quote like hire exceptional people and then get out of their way, and that's it. Stas, coming a little bit to the present, I remember when we first met, I visited your office in Kiev, and there were two things that made us very excited about the company. One was your brilliant network effects, and the second was how well organized you were on the execution. I mean, executing on the business with many, many restaurants is very difficult. And I think, having my experiences from Rocket Internet's business and some other businesses, like given the stage of your company, you were really at amazing level. But the network effects were in the busiest business areas for the business lunches, which is kind of an event that disappeared this year. How did you handle this? Because like, I'm not sure if we can reveal this, but you're already above your pre-COVID numbers, which given the
Yeah.
market is quite amazing. How did you manage to turn around the company in these 12 months to actually come back on an amazing growth path?
Mhm. So first, it was disaster for everybody. So we were focusing on the busiest areas, financial districts of all the biggest financial centers in US. And we were growing like 15-20% month over month. Everything looked great. We got network effect there. But then in March, within 1 month, you see that people switched working from offices to home. And then you have a lot of areas with restaurants, but nobody using you there because there is no people there. And we dropped around 60% right away with my co-founder, and we started thinking on opportunities that we can get from that and how we can quickly get back. And then we also noticed that people been still looking to order with us, but they were asking for restaurants in areas like, for example, in New York, they were asking in areas Brooklyn, New Jersey. And we also noticed restaurants that we had there, not many, started receiving a lot of orders. And then we quickly figured out, okay, so we have the same strategy before. However, right now we need to change urban areas to suburban areas where people right now. And then we quickly created priority areas where already we have most of the users that have been launching our app. We kind of had a map for that. Right away, New Jersey, Brooklyn, they became leading areas for us. Bay Area as well, Austin. So we started seeing a lot of areas that been growing really fast, and then we focused our sales team there to speed up the growth. And so right now we are growing even much faster than before because in suburban areas, people are not just looking for lunch as before. They're looking for breakfast, lunch, dinner, brunch. That's why we have more orders per user right now than before. This is really good for us. Plus, contactless payments, that's something new that we launched because of the COVID. And that added even more orders. And that driving a lot of new customers for us right now because restaurants are promoting us as a solution that their customers have to use in order to order at that restaurant. I think there are a few most important things. First of all, you don't need to wait until everything get better. So most important, you need to act and figure out what changed and what people need now, why they don't use you now. In our case, it was easy. Hey, I don't see any restaurants in my area now because I'm in Brooklyn. And we're like, okay, that's fixable. It just takes some time. We looked from the product side and we noticed that, okay, so restaurants now need to figure out how to feed people without any contact. That means people will be ordering online or somehow, but if I don't know where to go, how can I order there online? So we understood that people will be out, but they will need order without a contact on the spot. And that's how we quickly introduced QR codes and options for people to order without contact on the spot. And restaurants rushed using that right away. And we offer that for free. Like, hey, use that for free. We don't charge any money for that. And right now it drives a lot of restaurants toward our company. For us right now, restaurants are free user acquisition. We don't do marketing, and restaurants promoting us.
I think that's actually a brilliant part of your model, that your product makes sense for restaurant because your interests are aligned. So they actually promote Allset while promoting their business as well, and your user base is just growing and growing.
Yep.
Stas, one question here, because you didn't move, you're still in the States through all the pandemic, and your team is Kiev. Uh, was it a plus or a minus in the COVID time with all the business turbulences?
For me, it's even plus because before everybody in Ukraine were in the office and everybody were wanted not to go to office, and I wasn't a big believer in working with people not in the office. And I myself was like I had to travel like frequently to Ukraine. Right now, when we switched working from home and everybody liked that, we didn't see any drop in productivity, or if we saw any, we fixed that. Right now, we have big office in Ukraine and it's pretty empty. Like it's a bit empty, unfortunately. But we turned it into co-working space. So it means nobody has their concrete spot, but whoever wants to come by, they free to take any spot and work. So overall, it positively impacted because first we spent less on offices in US. We closed all the US offices and everybody comfortably working from home. But again, if you have strong team leaders that are day to day in contact with their team and they have concrete KPIs, you don't need to micromanage and manage them. It doesn't matter, honestly, whether they are in the office or they're working from home. If people want to work from home and they are more productive, why not? For example, we want somebody who will help us to grow amount of users that coming from referral program. Let's say that's one of the feature of product owner. Then we're going to look for product owner for a person. Then we put that in descriptions, and then when we hire that person, we want to make sure that person will prove that he will have fun and enjoy while working on that feature and getting those results. And then when they have fun and they like doing what we want them to do or what we need them to do, then they're unstoppable. They will work anywhere more hours than needed. This is just a simple strategy we have there. So now they spend less time on traveling and they spend more time, I guess, working or doing what they like.
Stas, one final thing. I hope there are founders who are considering moving to US and launching a business there. What are the kind of things you would advise them to do or surprises you had on your journey that are worth sharing?
So it depends on the stage of your company for sure. First, just get to know the markets where you're in there. For example, you may be in the car market in US or in European country or anywhere else. So you should know that this market is different in US. Speak to customers and owners or users or potential customers there and figure out that they really have that problem and how it can be fixed because most likely it's going to be different there in US than what you have in Europe. Probably not dramatically different, but it's hidden in details. You need to get it, like make sure that you're doing the right thing for the right people. Second, try to find partner. Of course, you need somebody in US to help you on the product and on sales, or like sales definitely need to be done only in US and in US by US person, at least led by US person, and product preferably as well. So first of all, even if you don't have money, don't look for cheap sales reps or cheap product managers there. Just look for the right experienced people in that and try to get them as partners or as advisors for a bit of stocks for the help, or even better for like make them co-founders, but better just advisors. Like you will need that. Otherwise, it will not help. I wish before I wouldn't hire some like average people, but in exchange I'll better get less time, but from more experienced people there in my industry that can be working with me and saying good things about me to other potential clients or investors. Those are a few recommendations.
Cool. I think super valuable. Stas, thanks a lot. This was super interesting. I think like your story can be very inspirational and a lot of learnings to be taken.
Thanks for listening. I hope it's valuable and you got some interesting tips or findings. If you liked it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or you can get us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again and see you in next episodes.